Welcome. I am Halise Lieberman, Director of the Toby Center for Jewish Life and Learning here in Warsaw. You inspired this special edition of TJHT Talks. You have reached out to us to find out about what is happening on the ground in Poland, and you have asked us two very important questions. What can we do and how can we help? Tonight's guests will shed both personal and professional light on the efforts to assist the almost 600,000 refugees already in Poland, giving you insights in real time. It is my honor to introduce you to our moderator and our speakers. Professor Dariusz Stola is the former director of the Polin Museum of the History of Polish Jews in Warsaw, a historian of the 20th century Polish history. Dr. Stola lectures around the world and is a prolific author focusing on communism in Poland, Polish-Jewish relations, and the Holocaust. Michael Szudrzyk, Chief Rabbi of Poland, has a long history of involvement with the Jewish communities of Eastern Europe. Appointed as Chief Rabbi in 2006, Rabbi Szudrzyk serves Poland's growing Jewish communities and is the official liaison between Polish Jews, the government, and the Catholic Church. Welcome. Dr. Marek Skolimowski served as the Deputy Consul General of the Republic of Poland in New York and is political counselor at the Embassy of Poland in Tel Aviv. An experienced businessman and philanthropist, he currently serves as the President and Executive Director of the Kosciuszko Foundation. Welcome. Amos Lev-Ran serves as the director of the JDC FSU's Division for External Relations. His work focuses on board and donor relations, fostering strategic partnerships, and educating the broader community about JDC's efforts throughout the former Soviet Union. Welcome, Amos. Agnieszka Wondowska is the managing editor of Notes from Poland, as well as a print and online journalist. For many years, Aga has worked for the Polish mainstream media, covering migration, human rights, and women's rights issues. And our general manager, Jakub Wyszak, and the Toby Center's point person, has been delivering packages and transporting refugees to safe havens and will report from one of the border crossings. Professor Stola, the mic is yours.
In history of not only Ukraine and not only of Eastern Europe, but of Europe in general and probably the world. It's a turning point into a road leading, we don't know yet where to. It's also a devastating war. It's a completely unjustified aggression by a major power, an authoritarian regime against a European democratic country. It's a humanitarian crisis unfolding in front of our eyes, and it's going on. So we are in the middle of a drama. We want to understand more, we try to understand more, and we want to be better prepared to know how to react to this dramatic developments. Let me start asking question to Mr. Marek Skolimowski. You are a very experienced diplomat. You've been involved in philanthropy. You must be a keen observer. What are your observations? And you are now at the border, close to one of the border crossings. And you have been for a few days there, as I see from your Facebook posts. So you've been in the middle of a scene of this refugee crisis unfolding in Europe. Could you please tell us something more than what we can learn from the TV news and our news feeds?
It's absolutely, it's unfolding. The first day I actually, my hometown is Lubaczew, so when the war broke out, I immediately contacted my friends in Lviv and encouraged them to leave the city and head to the Polish border. It took them 10 hours, to decide. So they spent another 30 hours at the border, but they are right now staying with me, and they will staying as long as they need. And then I made a couple of other houses available in the area for a long-term stay for those people who want to they still think they don't know what will happen. First, they thought, oh, it's like an incursion, or so they'll come back, or they'll help their friends at the border. Now we don't really know what it is. But as you said, the crisis is unfolding. In the first two 3 days, we heard about the long lines on the other side of the border and the growing crisis. Now I see this humanitarian aid is piling up on this side of the border. Only few NGOs or individuals are able to cross the border. That's what I did today with one of them, to cross the border to deliver some aid on the other side. So I see that they put a couple of tents on the other side and serve hot food and drinks to those who already spent hours getting to the border. And what's my observation, this is like waves of people coming here and the human tragedy. I was really heartbroken seeing that there are like 2 checkpoints. It's the final one when the passports are checked and people enter this border area, and a couple of hundreds yards, meters away from that point into the Ukraine, there's another checkpoint where, as I describe it when I saw it, is that where families are separated. So that's the last moment that their fathers, husbands say goodbye to their wives and children. This is really heartbreaking. This is something I will remember for the rest of my life. And just to add that, I might say that the Polish people are wonderful here and along the border. They're very well organized. They immediately rushed to set up this kind of, they call it reception centers and tents, and provide some food and heated tents. And local authorities are extremely well organized. At least at this point, on the Polish side, everything is working very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rabbi Shudri, you also have been to the border at least once. I have seen your pictures at the border. And I know that the Jewish community of Warsaw and Jewish organizations across Poland have mobilized almost immediately, and they are providing food, shelter, responding to various needs of the Ukrainian Jews coming into Poland. Could you please tell us more about these efforts and how Jews, individuals and communities around the world are helping you?
Okay. Well, first, I just want to clarify, we're helping not, say our primary focus is on Ukrainian Jewish refugees, but anyone who comes to us, anyone who asks us for help, no Ukrainian refugee is turned away. I was asked today if I could help Tatar and Muslims coming out of the Ukraine. I said, absolutely yes. Call us, we'll help. We're here to help any refugee who needs help. I started looking into finding housing for refugees. And now that I look back at it, it's kind of a little weird. A week before the war began, because it was obvious something bad was going to happen. Everyone expected something bad could happen. I don't think anyone expected there would be this kind of human disaster that it is. I mean, beyond words. And we're on this side. We're not even on that side. We just see the pictures as you do from CNN, from whoever else you're watching. But as soon as the war began, which was a week ago today, that's it. We met on Friday, a week ago Friday, and we said we need to make a crisis management center, which was fascinating because the first problem was there are no words for it in Polish, a proper terminology as we have in English, crisis management center. So we just call it in English, and all of a sudden, within hours, Jewish organizations, all of them, started working together. Kind of like what I dreamt of for 30 years. Somehow Putin helped us get there. That there is never been such unity within the Jewish community and also within Poland. And so what are we doing? We're doing several things. The first thing we did was we set up a hotline. Within hours after our meeting, we had a hotline, and we were getting the word out to which way, social media, posters, flyers, whatever that people should see. If they want help, call us. We're here to help. And it started to work immediately. People started calling. We need a place to stay. Where can we get this? Where can we get that? And so we are active right now we've turned over, there are 3 facilities belonging to the Jewish community of Poland and 1 belonging to the Tesh Kazet, which is the social, cultural Jewish organization, in Lublin, in Lodz, outside of Warsaw, in Shudborov, and in Kazimierz Dolny. Altogether, we can house about 250 people. Right now, we're getting very soon to capacity. Because we're reaching capacity, as of yesterday, we started looking for small apartments, hotels that we could begin to rent rooms or small apartments from, in order to make sure that people have a place to sleep. In addition, we also are looking to make sure that they have food to eat, both from the community, those that want kosher food. Anyone who wants kosher food can come to the community and receive it. We're also sending out kosher food to groups of people as they need it. In addition to that, we also have organized volunteers for medical services, legal services, and I think very importantly, psychological services. What we're also on, hopefully by Sunday, we will have RV campers outside 2 of the major border crossings that will simply have information who we are, and any refugee that wants more information about how we can help them can come. The idea of the RV camper is that at this point there are no hotels in the area with available rooms. There are no apartments. There are no almost floor space. So I said, if we want to send volunteers to the border to really see when the people come over, how can we help them? Let them know we're here to help them. The only way to do it is to send them in an RV camper, in which way they get simply sleep in the same facility. I spoke with someone from the Voivoda today, from that area of Poland, the governor, and he is now looking exactly, because we want to make sure that when the campers get there, that they have the appropriate permissions and we have the appropriate spot. So we're working on that with the local government. And actually, he is then going to talk to the mayors of the small towns, Medica and Korchova, to make sure that we're going to be right near where the refugees come out. In addition, by Monday, we should have in our Hillel facility, which is like in the States, the Hillel that works with university students and young adults, is going to convert their space into a welcome center. Any refugee is welcome to come, get a hot cup of tea or coffee and cookies. We're going to set up computers so people that need to start working can sit and work. If need be, we will also bring in early childhood educators. The Jewish school, the Lord of Marashah School, has also said that any Ukrainian child that wants to go to our school will be able to do so tuition free. We have a daycare center, Dreidel, which will also be accepting any child that wants to go. And as time goes on, we will think of more things that we haven't thought of. You're taking a group of people who they themselves are, some of them relatively new to Jewish identity, newly discovered. That's a story that we've already talked about. And now they said, okay, now it's time we have to help. And just a couple of quick reflections at the border. As Mark said, as everyone just, you've seen the photos, but standing there, it's heartbreaking. Number one, basically what you see, what Mark said is that it's women and children, because the men have to stay behind to fight. And the thoughts of separating families, we Jews know all too well what that means. And to look at people that have just walked across the border or in the bus across the border minutes after they arrived, and to see, on the one hand, their relief to be safe, on the other hand, the anguish of leaving half the family behind. It's just, I don't know, heartbreaking is so little of a word. And when I was there, I really went for one purpose. I wanted to see where we could put the RV campers, to get a feel of the lay of the land, that to talk to the governor's office, to talk to the town officials, saying, I want to stand at this point. And I was able to tell them, I want to be the parking lot of this supermarket in this place, because that's where we're going to be able to reach people. And we hopefully will have the permissions in place by Sunday, Monday morning. So the one thing is just to see the splitting, as Mark said, of the families, and then just to look at the faces of the little children. And I know, and it's not historically accurate to compare them to other faces of children that we've seen coming off of transport. And I don't like playing these games. I really don't. But I'm sorry, as a human being, I can't avoid it. I can't avoid it, to see the fear. And so the little bit I could do in the little bit time that I was there is I brought with me chocolate eggs from the Kinder surprise eggs, and simply to give out to as many kids as I could, and just to be able to give them a smile, even for a moment, after all the horrors and the traumas that they went through. I met this morning in my office two young sisters that made it to Warsaw, wanted to help them, and they came with a dog. Okay, it's normal. You bring your dog. You don't leave the dog behind. The dog was traumatized. The dog had a problem when I tried to come near the dog, and it was just kind of, I know it's a kind of an absurd thing to say, but it's, again, heartbreaking. And the one thing that it was, and there are other uplifting things. I really have to say that this time, the government, not like in other cases, including a few months ago at the border, at a different border with Belarus, which we were very much against what was happening. This time they got it right. This refugee center in Korchova is quite well organized, hundreds and hundreds of cots. Everyone's got their own cot to sleep on, hot food, transportation to go to other places that they want to, all kinds of information. That was uplifting. And then when I got to Medica, which is another border crossing, I was actually able to go up to the border. And as I turn around, 500, 1,000 feet from the border, there's this booth with Hebrew on it. I didn't expect to find Hebrew there. It was Rescuers Without Borders, Israeli doctors who came just to save lives. And I'm, after all the horrors of seeing our guys there at the border, the beautiful Israeli flag, and doctors simply helping people, because in this long journey, people broke arms, people broke legs, all kinds of things, including the day before, a woman had a heart attack right nearby, and she had flatlined, and they were able to reanimate her, and she's alive. I mean, literally, they saved this woman's life. I talked a lot. Let me give other people a chance to talk.
Thank you very much. Thank you indeed for this moving account of what you have seen. Agnieszka, let me now turn to Agnieszka Wądołowska. You cover now various topics in contemporary Polish politics and society and the economy. What do you believe is the big picture of it? What are the most important aspects of the context of this dramatic development of the border?
Yes, thank you. At Notes from Poland, we are now almost exclusively covering the terrible events in Ukraine and the Poland's response to it, of course, how the government is responding. And as it was already mentioned, it seems that we are really doing this right when it comes to providing the help. I mean, it's not only lifting the quarantine or the vaccination obligation to just help to come people in, but also like the government is really this time making sure that people who come in receive very comprehensive help. As it was said, there are those reception centers at the border, but there are also a number of measures taken on the legal level. So hopefully the kids that arrive here, and the statistics show that it's probably half of the refugees that come are children, that they will be able to go to school very quickly. Actually, Warsaw schools already reported that some kids, like 50, I believe, or 56, already went to school today, which is, this tiny bits of normality that we can try and restore for them as quickly as possible. But what I find most smoothing, you've shared your stories from the border, and I'm based in Warsaw, but the level of mobilization here of individuals, of course, there is the whole state response, but the state of individuals wanting to go and help, going to Dworzec Zachodni, where most refugees arrive in Warsaw, with sandwiches, with whole boxes of food and water, which disappear in minutes. And this is really, in this terrible time, a very heartwarming image. And I believe, although the state response is, of course, very important, individuals now, not only NGOs, are really doing whatever they can in Poland. And it's even reflected in some of the polls that you can see. An unprecedented 90% of Poles support accepting Ukrainian refugees, and more than 64% say they're willing to help, even if not all of them will do something. That's an amazing mobilization that we haven't seen before in Poland. And I think that's what we're also trying to cover and show, that it's all types of organization that step in now.
Well, thank you very much. I also have seen uplifting scenes which remind me the glorious days of the solidarity movement, but now the solidarity is extended to Ukrainians and to refugees, which is really moving, and especially seen against the background of rather bad experiences last year when the government was talking anti-refugee sentiment due to the crisis at the border with Belarus. But let me turn to Amos Levran. You have extensive knowledge of the Soviet Union and Ukraine. Joint Distribution Committee has been assisting the Ukrainian Jewish communities for a long time. Could you please tell us what's happening there on the ground, what relief and rescue efforts are taking place in Ukraine?
Yes, so thank you for the opportunity. I share in the shock and desperation of all the speakers that spoke before me. This is a human tragedy of proportions that we haven't seen in generations. JDC is the largest Jewish humanitarian organization in the world. We're active in over 70 countries, including all of the countries of the former Soviet Union and all over Europe. And we're prepared for dealing with an operation that we haven't dealt with since the 1940s. We are active in Ukraine on a regular basis, both through humanitarian assistance and through community development. We have a network of welfare relief centers called Cheseds. Chesed in Hebrew is an act of loving kindness, and those relief centers provide basic support for elderly and children at risk. And we also have many community development programs, from Jewish community centers through volunteer programs, our youth movement, young leadership, and overall we're reaching a significant part of the population in Ukraine. Before the current crisis, we were reaching 37,000 elderly. Of those, 9,900 Nazi victims, another 2,500 children at risk, and between 25 to 30,000 through our community development programs. So altogether, if you're talking about a Jewish population of about 200,000 in Ukraine, according to the demographer de la Pergola from the Hebrew University, according to the law of return criteria, some estimates, by the way, go up to 350,000. Then we're talking about a third of the population, of the Jewish population. And over the past few weeks, we've been in preparation mode, thinking about different scenarios. And we very quickly put in place many emergency protocols, some from lessons that we learned from COVID, some lessons that we learned from the 2014 crisis in Ukraine. And that starts with being able to work remotely from home, whether the JDC field offices or those cheses that I mentioned earlier, whether it's prioritizing the elderly clients. We have many clients who are bedridden, who are homebound, who won't survive without home care. And so we need to prioritize them. Dealing with providing more food, medicine, and water to the cheses themselves and to the elderly clients. We provide support through bank cards and food cards. And so we basically transferred funds more in advance, and also even up to last week, to make sure that whoever can still use the card should have the capacity and the funds to do that, and also prepared our volunteers for a possible escalation. And since last week, we're basically shifting into emergency mode, or even I'd say war mode, where we are dealing with the current situation through, first of all, launching an international hotline. Up until that point, we had hotlines for each one of the cheseds. We have 18 cheseds scattered throughout Ukraine and reaching 1,000 service delivery locations. And each one of them had a hotline for incoming and outgoing calls that was operated by both staff and volunteers. And within a day, we realized that we need to back up those hotlines because some people were simply going to the basement to stay safe, or going to the subway stations to stay safe. And within 24 hours, we established an international hotline with the help of an Israeli cell company, where JDC staff that are Russian speakers basically volunteered to man the call center that is actually based in Israel. It's a Ukrainian number, but it gets you to Israel. There are 20 calls that can be received simultaneously. And Saturday morning, even though it was Shabbat, we really see it as pikuach nefesh. We sent an SMS to the tens of thousands of clients across Ukraine saying, if you cannot reach your local hotline, reach this number. And the second part of the call center is outgoing calls. So we recruited our volunteer center in Kishinev, strong volunteer center, to do calls to the most needy clients, the homebound, the bedridden, from Moldova. And we had a call for action in Israel and recruited hundreds of volunteers who were Russian speakers who are now calling clients. So you have now a situation where people from Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and Ashdod and Ashkelon are calling elderly clients, some living in places that are being bombed, in Kharkiv, in Zaporozhye, in Dnipro, in Kiev. And it really is a story of, I think, Jewish solidarity. And one of the speakers mentioned that we needed this situation to work closely together. We always try to work together. I think that now everyone understands the gravity of the situation, and there's a very, very high level of cooperation among all the organizations. We're working very, very closely with all the partners on the ground, international partners, local partners, and even working collaboratively on various projects that we are now engaged in to help refugees. And we are also making sure that home care is continuing as much as possible. Miraculously, thus far, it has continued. In some places in full, which is quite unbelievable. In some places for the neediest clients, based on our emergency protocol, we're prioritizing the neediest. We are looking for ways to provide the food and medicine for those places that have shortages, and obviously dealing with refugees. We have hotlines not only for Ukraine, but also now in Poland, obviously, in Romania, Hungary, in Slovakia, and we have a new hotline that's dedicated to evacuation as well. We are seeing massively in need people coming through, people who have been on the road for 2, 3, 4 days and even more, helping them with accommodation, with food, with helping them think about their next step. And we are also preparing for what could be a very, very significant wave. And although we already have capacity for thousands. We're seeing this as a situation where we have to prepare for an even more significant wave in the future. So we're very, very concerned. We could be at the start of a humanitarian crisis that we haven't seen in many, many years. And we're doing the best we can to work in full collaboration and to provide as much support as we can.
Well, thank you very much for this comprehensive presentations. It's truly impressive, an idea of having a call center in Israel to serve the people in Ukraine. It's really impressive. But when I'm thinking about the elderly people who are trapped in these cities under siege now, under heavy shelling, it's truly dramatic. When I was listening to your accounts, I was thinking, what are the most urgent needs? What are the things or actions that are most urgent, necessary, needed now? And what do you think will be necessary a week from now and a month from now? Could you please share with me your assessment as those who are close, who have seen it, and who are already helping?
Yes, so that's a very important question. And frankly, when you look at the needs at this scale, you can really only plan for a quite immediate future, meaning when it comes to humanitarian disasters, you can think about it in the short term, in the midterm, and the long term. And right now, we really are focused only on the immediate term, and even looking at 2 months ahead. You can't really plan much further at this stage. The one of the biggest concern is clearly to bring food and medicine and water to whoever needs it in Ukraine. That is something that we're looking at very, very closely, using whatever resources, options, connections that are possible from both within the country and from outside the country. This is very concerning, and it really is a time of bravery, where people are going above and beyond, and it's also a time of dealing with the big solutions, but also the small solutions, and sometimes having a solution where you solve a few problems locally with different people, with different connections, is also something that's very, very important. And it really is also saving each life one by one. And so that's the major concern that we have. Another concern is clearly being able to evacuate whoever wishes to evacuate. What we've seen thus far is that the elderly clients tend to stay. People who are homebound, who are bedridden, people who are frail do not tend to evacuate. They tend to hunker down. And so even in our evacuation efforts, we see that there are very few of our chesed clients, and more, as was said earlier, women, children, the men, as was mentioned, need to stay behind. And the fourth is looking at our capacities in terms of the waves of the refugees, and being able to ensure that whoever needs help will receive that help, regardless of the number.
Thank you very much. I turn to Marek Skolimowski. What is your opinion? What is necessary, needed today, and will be in a week and a month from now?
I agree with Amos. We need to provide food and medicine on the other side of the border as quickly as possible and effective as possible. It's becoming more and more difficult because the roads are clogged on the other side, so we cannot go deep into Ukraine. But I see even little trucks coming from as far as Mariupol. We were loading one of the trucks from Mariupol today. I was really surprised to see. I don't know how he's going to go back to the city, but wherever he goes, for us it's important to simply deliver all necessities on the other side to the other side of the border. That's the most important thing. And of course, this you ask about this immediate thing. On the Polish side, as we already heard, the situation is under control, I would say. And this is because of the fact that over 90% of the refugees or those who cross the border are immediately picked up by their friends and families and taken elsewhere in Poland. So that's very important. So we don't have the similar situation that like on the other side of the border, that people are waiting a few days until they are picked up or transported elsewhere. But also as the Kościuszko Foundation, we just opened a fundraiser to help Ukraine, which we sent, this immediate money for local NGOs who know the situation on the border. They have their contacts. They are, very quick. They like today, we breezed through the border without even showing our passports. So that wouldn't be possible before the war. And we also are thinking about the long term. It's like in my house, I have a professor from the Lviv University. As I mentioned, I don't really know how long they're going to stay. We need to take care of the Ukrainian intelligentsia. At some point, they need to come back to the country and rebuild it, reopen the universities, and start teaching. So that's very important. We in the next few days, we'll appeal to the Polish universities to just simply accept these people, to find some way for them to continue their research, to give them something to do, so they, in dignity, they will stay here in Poland doing what they've been doing for years. Because I can't imagine that those people are going to be working in restaurants or elsewhere. No, it's impossible. We need to think this way. It's the same with the students, and in different walks of life. So that's, as we are educational foundation, we focus on education. So now it's humanitarian aid, this immediate aid at the border, and the next step would be to help Ukrainian scholars.
Well, thank you. Let me add, because I was trying to follow up what's going on the Polish academia, how Polish universities are trying to help. Several universities have already started. They have already opened programs for both Ukrainian students and scholars. Polish Academy of Sciences, where I worked at, has opened an emergency program accepting for 3 months Ukrainian colleagues who have to leave. And I know about similar initiative elsewhere, here in Vienna and Berlin, in Germany, in various places. So, and this is only within a week. But if the conflict continues, we certainly have many people to admit and offer them help. Agnieszka, what is your opinion about the needs a week from now and later on?
Of course, it will all depend on how many more people will have to leave Ukraine. I mean, the estimates range from 1 million to 5 million people that might leave. So the needs might greatly differ. But from the Warsaw perspective, and seeing so many houses of Poles opening for the needs and opening to refugees coming in, we start thinking already about more long-term perspective. So as I mentioned, how to get children to school, as you mentioned, how to get intellectuals to find work that would enable them to continue with whatever they've been doing in Ukraine, but also to provide legal framework on how they're going to function. As for many, if they claim refugee status, it would mean that under current regulation in Poland, they will not be permitted to work for 6 months. So we are facing a paradox here, because for lots of these people, work is the first thing they're going to need, to organize their reality. If they want to try to stand on their own feet. As you mentioned, some have families, friends, some have relatives, some have Polish friends, but they will all want to find their way here and not to stand in this limbo. So Polish government already moved to introduce some changes, but it will be extremely important that those changes are really implemented, and the people who come in get a reality that can be professional, educational, and will simply continue to work and try to establish some sort of normality here in Poland, at least for the time being. Of course, there will be great need for psychological help, both for parents. But as you mentioned, these are mostly women with children that are coming in. So for the mothers, but also for the kids, it's really heartbreaking when you read those stories and listen to friends telling who house refugees in their homes, to like saying what pictures the children are drawing now, you know, all the horrors that they are trying to somehow internalize and like work through. I mean, there's going to be an immense need for psychological help and counseling to just let them go through that terrible experiences, especially if, as you mentioned, their fathers, their partners are back in Ukraine and they really don't know whether they're going to see them again.
Thank you. Rabbi, what's your opinion?
Okay. Well, a couple of things. So thank you, Agnieszka, for talking again about psychological counseling. I should mention that we've already started it. On Sunday, we'll have arriving 3 to 5 Russian-speaking psychologists from Israel through the World Zionist Organization, both do direct counseling and also to train some of our people, at least how to do, not really counseling, but at least, crisis management. And in the end, I even see that the most important in terms of psychological services is going to be for the refugees. But I even see after a week's time that our volunteers working are also going to need help. Just, every day hearing the next horrible story after the next horrible story. The people volunteering are just wonderful people, and wonderful people get broken hearts.
Yes.
Also, just to emphasize to Amos that everything that's happening, at least in Poland, which is dealing with the refugees, we're working very hand in hand with the JDC. When I say we, I mean JDC, Sochnot, the Jewish organizations, the Israeli embassy. We're all working together. Your CEO is here right now with a couple of more people. We met last night. We're meeting again tomorrow, and again. And just the idea of pikuach nefesh and sending out things on Shabbat. I remember last Friday afternoon where the chief rabbi of the Ukraine begged me not to turn off my phone on Shabbat, which I always do, because maybe somebody's going to need my help. And for me, that was, from one rabbi to another, one Orthodox rabbi, another Orthodox rabbi. Whoa, I've never heard that before. No Orthodox rabbis ever said, Michael, don't turn off your phone for Shabbos. So they're really bringing home the sense of urgency. In terms of what else is going to be necessary, it's already been said very well. Very important is going to give some sense of normalcy. I really see, at least for the Jewish refugees, 3 different distinct groups with overlap. One are those who want to make Aliyah, those who want to go to Israel. That the Jewish agency is taking care of. They're in hotels, and they're pretty well taken care of. Although we also have volunteers there working with the people in the hotels because they're just sitting and waiting, and so to be able to help them deal with that waiting time. Then you have those that kind of Marek I think mentioned, is that those that come here and are moving on. They have family, friends somewhere else, whether in Poland. In the case of the Jewish community, usually it's Germany, France, England, the United States, or wherever. And so they're here for a couple of days and they move on. They also need help. And then since the most needy group are those people who have nowhere else to go and or want to go back to the Ukraine. They wanted to escape bombs. They didn't want to desert their country. And they want to go back, and they just don't know how soon they can or if they ever can go back. But so there's 3 distinct groups having 3 different set of needs.
Thank you very much. Let me add that we have here online one more person who is actually at the border, at the checkpoint. Before we started the meeting, I was talking to Kuba Wyszak, who is part of the Taubi Center team in Warsaw, and I know that he was traveling back and forth between Warsaw and the Ukrainian border in the last days. Kuba, do you hear me? Could you please tell what's going on now?
And Darius, if I may just say, and Kuba is the one that took me around yesterday.
Kuba, are you at the border? Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, and I'm still at the border. Actually, at the border crossing itself. I will show you. Those are the buses coming to Ukraine and the border crossing itself. And I hope that you can see people in front of us. Those are actually people crossing it by foot, and from here they are taken by the buses to the special facilities that we visited yesterday with Rabbi Michael. And when I heard on a week ago, when this new stage of this war that is happening already from 2014, when the Russians took over Crimea, as many of you probably, I couldn't fall asleep, so I decided to do something. And the first thing that came out into my mind was just to go to the border and to bring the people to Warsaw. So when I show up for the first time, I asked some Ukrainians to write me something on a piece of paper. It's written in Ukrainian, Warsaw, and originally it was written 3 to 4 seats, free of charge. Right now, thanks to the donation from our guests and colleagues, the number of seats is 5 to 7, and moreover, right now I'm sharing this card with 2 of my friends that are driving with me with the other vans like this one, and I'm here already for the 6th time, and it takes 5 up to 6 hours to drive one way. All total distance is like 1,000 kilometers back and forth from Warsaw, and I personally took over 20 people, and together with my friends it will be over 50 right now, including 14 children with cancer that we took from the different hospitals in Lublin and Warsaw. And what strikes me, those people are entering the car saying no words, sometimes crying, a kind of decompression, and just later on starting to talk to each other. And to me, most of them doesn't speak English, so, and my Ukrainian is worse than my Chinese, so I'm using help of my Ukrainian friends in Poland, so Google Translate, and the view when they are reconnected with their families, it's unbelievable. It's like beyond description. I don't have words how to describe it, and this is a simple help, and maybe it's not many of people, and we're like a drop, but every major flood it's created by many smaller drops.
Thank you very much, Kuba. Thank you very much for all your efforts. Let me add that today by noon, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees estimated that there is already more than 1 million of refugees who have left Ukraine, moving westward, and that more than half of them moved across the Polish border. Maciej Duszczyk, my colleague at the Warsaw University, who's an expert in migration policy, estimated that in the morning there were more than 500,000, and clearly now in the evening it must have exceeded 600,000 people who have crossed into Poland. Not all of them intend to stay to Poland. Some of them have families and friends farther to the west, in Germany, elsewhere in Western Europe, or United States, Canada, and elsewhere. The family that my son has assisted, who brought like Kuba from the border, they want to move to farther to the Western Europe. But in any case, it's just within a week, you have 1 million people. And whatever happens, we have a long queue on the other side of the border, which means the stream of refugees is not going to decline within a visible future. We all pray that Ukrainians stop the invaders, that they can defend the country effectively. But if, God forbid, it doesn't happen, we will see much larger numbers. Experts in such situation estimate that refugees tend to go where they have friends or families or they know the country. And Poland has the largest Ukrainian diaspora in Europe. Actually, it's a very recent phenomenon. It's only in the last 20 years that Ukrainians started to work in Poland. And in the high season in summer, we have some more than 1.5 million Ukrainians coming and going, mostly short term. And we can see it now, as I think Marek has mentioned, that most of those coming have someone in Poland with whom they can stay. But for example, my son, when he was bringing friends from the border, he also took 3 people who has never seen before, and they knew nobody in Poland, and they needed shelter. So we may expect that if this drama continues, Poland may receive maybe 2 million people if Russian forces don't block the roads westward. So we may expect the crisis, the refugee crisis, to continue, and all the needs that have been just mentioned by our speakers will just grow in urgency and in drama. I see Helise, which means we may have some questions from our audience. Helise?
So thank you. Thank all of you. Moving and inspiring and really laying a roadmap for what is now and what will be, as much as we can imagine and prepare for. There are many questions. Most of them have to do with the question we will pose at the end as a way of closing. But first, we're going to take a question from Paula Dromi, which was asked by several other people as well. And we want to bring it to you as our guest panelists.
Can
I may try to answer that question. As far as the Indian students or Indian citizens are concerned, I know there is a hub organized at the Yashonka airport in Rzeszów, and there are buses, like shuttle buses, coming to all border crossings to pick up Indian students. There are about 20,000 expected to arrive to Polish borders. So the Indian government organized that pretty well, and they are taking them from the Yashonka airport directly to India, as far as I know.
Thank you. Ukraine, before the war, had more than 80,000 foreign students at Ukrainian universities, and the largest group were actually Indian citizens. So I suppose that these 20,000 are not all Indian students in Ukraine, probably more than half of them, but still there is still a large pool.
Yeah, that's what I heard from our customs officers at the border, because I was surprised to see these Indian buses at the border. So I just simply asked, what are they doing? Who they are helping with? All refugees? No, there's something organized by the Indian government, and there is a hub at Yashonka airport. So an estimate is 20,000. Of course, we are talking about Poland only. Maybe some of them will go to Romania, Moldova, Hungary, Slovakia.
Mm-hmm.
I can say that when I was at the border yesterday at the refugee center, basically almost all the men I saw were clearly not what you would expect Caucasian Ukrainians, but people of color, and many of them looked like students. Now I was there for an hour, and I don't want to draw conclusions for a bigger picture, but at least that's what I saw. So they are getting out, and then the question is, how good can their governments help them get home?
Let me add that I have just read that Wizz, a major budget airline which has headquarters in Hungary, has offered thousands of free tickets to refugees from Ukraine to move farther west from Poland, Slovakia, Romania when they arrive here.
I would just thank you, Darius, and thank all of you. But one of the questions that would follow up, and it was mentioned several times, is there was a report about some discrimination at the border. And I just, maybe Agnieszka, you could speak to that. Several of our guests have already voiced that concern. So if you could put us in the picture, thank you.
Yes, thank you. That's a very important issue when it comes to what's happening at the border itself. And I'd like to say that despite widespread reports that Poland has been turning away or somehow mistreating non-white refugees, the evidence that we have found and followed is that such situations might have happened on the Ukrainian side, but there were not such instances on the Polish side, and the Polish authorities are emphasizing that they're treating all the refugees equally. We have with us people who are there at the border. Maybe you have some you've noticed any incidents, but from what we have and from also people reporting for us from the region, this is misinformation and false news.
And let me add that the foreign students in Ukraine face problems that are lesser for Ukrainians who have families or friends in Poland, because they know nobody in Poland. So they don't have the safety network that may assist them when they arrive to Warsaw or to Krakow or another over city, because they don't know anybody. So the situation certainly is more difficult than those Ukrainians who may rely on pre-existing migrant networks.
One other question that seems to really, there's a whole thread running through. First of all, many thanks to each and every one of you for what you shared, but also what you're doing and how you are bringing hope, life, and real things that are needed to sustain those refugees, our refugees now. One of the major questions is how best to help. What as Deborah, writes, I believe that the majority of the people on this chat want to help. We are just not sure where to begin. And so I would like to share with all of you and then ask you to, if I may, Dariusz, to say that we will be compiling information about possible ways of giving, donating, and sharing it with all of you on our mailing list. We will do our best to be as comprehensive as possible and ask each of our panelists to make sure that we are reporting and sharing the most up-to-date information. And I would just ask then if, in addition to that kind of communication, Dariusz, and I hand it back to you, what are other concrete ways that those who want to help, in addition to stepping up to the border, what can they do?
Who knows it best? There are so many needs that's difficult to prioritize, but maybe you have some ideas. What may be
May I start?
Yes, please.
Absolutely. The most important way to help is send money. I'm sorry. It doesn't sound elegant. It doesn't sound intelligent. It's just the truth. That's what we really need right now. People here on the ground, the local community, working with JDSA, Sochnut, we're also working with Polish NGOs. We're here on the ground. We have infrastructure on the ground. What we really need is, we could do everything if we have enough money, or almost everything if we have money. The one area that I think that we do need more help in terms of physical people volunteering are Russian-speaking psychologists, and that we're working on, especially from Israel, where there are many Russian-speaking psychologists, but they're also maybe from the States, from Canada, from Europe, from other places. The last thing is a new idea we're coming up today, and that is something very different, and it's just an idea, so maybe I shouldn't say it because it's not a project yet, but that is to do some kind of things online for Ukrainians in the Ukraine, in the shelters, in the subways, wherever they may be. We have Purim coming up, so the idea was to have different kind of, a Purim play, maybe the reading of the Megillah, something that we could reach out to them. It could be, we're still working on the idea that, there's people are so scattered, to somehow reach out to them, they should know they're not alone. But we're still working on the best way to do that. And if anybody wants to try to get involved with that, please be in touch.
Thank you.
Let me add something. I cannot agree more with Michael. We need money. Yes, of course, because now we have wonderful volunteers working. But if it continues, they will need to hire, professionals to run these warehouses with aid. So money is now something essential, because even warehouses are overloaded with food and all necessary items, and volunteers need to separate these things, select them, and handle them properly. There are medicine scents that some of them are just sold off the counter, so it's easy to transfer these items to the border, across the border. But people send even prescribed medicine, which are in Poland, it's a controlled substance. So you need to separate that immediately. So these are these simple things, and the problems here on the ground, and the money will help to solve a lot of problems. That's it. It's simply, the situation is so dynamic. The needs change every day. That's all I can add.
Amos?
I'm sorry, Darius, if I may, Mark, I'll let you know. I just secured yesterday a very large warehouse outside of Warsaw. So if you hear of anybody that needs space, let me know. We'll most likely be able to accommodate.
I definitely will. Let's talk about it tomorrow.
You got my number.
Yeah, of course.
And if I may again be the bad boy to say, what we don't need right now, and maybe other people have a different opinion. What we don't need right now are visiting missions to come to see the situation. We are already overworked. We need to be able to focus on the refugees, on helping them, on getting aid into the Ukraine, not ferrying missions to the border to see what's going on. And I'm sorry to say that. I wish we could, but we simply don't have the ability now to really properly use that appropriately.
Thank you. Amos, what is your opinion? Please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So we can end the session with a clear consensus that what is needed now is financial support. It's clear. And JDC launched a very significant emergency fundraising effort. We're raising millions of dollars. Millions more are needed. This is not a drill. This is the real thing. And people need to realize that the needs are enormous, and everyone at this time needs to step up and to do what he or she can. And the most critical need is the financial support.
Thank you. Let me add my opinion. I believe that the best way to stop the unfolding humanitarian crisis is to stop the aggression, stop the Russian invasion first. This is the most important thing. And probably our Ukrainian friends are praying for anti-aircraft missiles more than for humanitarian aid, but we are not soldiers. We can help the humanitarian operations. However, and there are some good signs that the European Union is to provide substantial amount of money as a solidarity fund to the frontline countries like Poland, Romania, or Slovakia, who are taking 90% of those refugees, and most of them will stay in these countries. And Poland is in relatively good shape. But when I think about Moldova, which is a small country that already took more than 100,000 people into a much poorer and much smaller country, that must be truly a challenge. So next thing after stopping the invasion is to make big governments or big institutions to offer substantial assistance that private individuals may be unable to provide.
So I would like to thank each and every one of you. I know time is precious because you're all on the front lines, whether they're on the border or in making sure the news is sent or overseeing massive operations. Jakub, thank you for sharing what you've been doing to contribute. Thank you, Darius, for pulling us all together and allowing us the space to share. And I know that from the comments that I'm reading and we can share with all of you, people are very grateful to have had this kind of face-to-face, as face-to-face as we can be, conversation with people such as yourselves who are really making the effort, but really making a difference. And the Toby Center, as I said earlier, is committed to gathering as much information from all of us here tonight, but others who we partner with and other organizations, both in Poland and international, who will be the right address to donate funds. And as all of our speakers agree right now, funds is what we need. And so that we can continue here on the ground with your help to assist the refugees and to make them feel welcome and keep them safe. Thank you, speakers. Thank you, colleagues. And thank all of you who've joined us tonight. We hope that if you want other kinds of information, as I said, it will be in our follow-up email. I also want to thank all of the organizations represented here for what they do ongoing prior to the crisis, in the crisis, and moving forward. And I'd like to thank the TJHT Talks team, Kaya Zizek, and we were joined tonight by Alexander Makuch and, of course, Jakub Wyszak. May we meet again under circumstances which are positive, and that we continue to do the work together. And there's a phrase, Hebrew phrase in English, comes to be, may we all go from strength to strength. Thank you. Dobranoc. Good night.
Thank you, Elise.